Alright, so today we're going to compare Edelbrock carburetors against Holley carburetors and just some of the ease of tunability and usability of both of these units compared against each other. And these units are for your mild builds. Get in, drive it around town, get in, take it to the drag strip. This is what most of us have sitting on the top of our engines. So anyway, without further ado, we're going to dive deeper in these carburetors, go through them system by system, from curb idle adjustment all the way up to jets, and just compare the two of them outright against each other. So without further ado, let's get into it. Now, for the duration of this video, we're going to go ahead and use the Summit carburetor as our Holley carburetor. Now, the Summit carburetor is produced by Holley. Notice the linkage is all exactly the same. The only difference being between the Summit and the Holley carburetor is it does not have side hung float bowls, versus the top of this carburetor here opens up. And the Summit carburetor runs annular boosters, where your Holley carburetor runs your standard straight leg boosters, and your accelerator pump works the same, but the parts to change your accelerator pump nozzle on the Summit are different than the Holley, your standard Holley. But again, Holley produces both of these carburetors. They make this for Summit. Everything else is the same, so we're going to go ahead and use it as our example here today. So again, exactly the same carburetor, just some slight variances. But as far as tuning goes, the parts and pieces that we're going to compare are exactly the same, and can easily be compared against the Edelbrock carburetor. So just comparing the basics of the two carburetors, they both come in at about the same price range. This Summit is about, it's just a little under $300, and your standard Street Avenger Holley carburetor also likewise is in the $300 to $350 range, same as the Edelbrock. So those things are the same across the board. You're pretty much paying the same amount of money for the product. They both come with electric chokes most often. Sometimes you do have an option, but the Summits come stock with an electric choke, as do the Edelbrocks. Now this one in particular, it's removed, but it works just as the same unit. So those two items comparatively are exactly the same. Also, comparing the curb idle circuits on both the Holley and the Edelbrock style carburetor, they're pretty much exactly the same. Same idea with the mixture screws as with the Holley, same idea with the curb idle screw, and they're both run on a circuit with transfer slots. So adjustability, they're pretty much exactly the same. Real simple, easy to understand. They all run the same vacuum ports, where you have ported vacuum, manifold vacuum, and then for a brake booster port, and they all have another port out back. Same with the Holley, same with the Summit. You have your vacuum ports, and then you have your port out back. So again, pretty much the same across the line on the idle circuits. Ease of adjustability, exactly the same, and usability, exactly the same. Alright, now from this point on, things get pretty different. Now on the Edelbrock carburetor, it uses a plunger style accelerator pump, where it has 3 different holes for your accelerator pump lever. So pretty easy to adjust and straightforward. Likewise, the Holley has multiple positions for, and they coincide to your idle settings, but they get a little bit more advanced, where you have pump cam, which you can change out, and you have some adjustment here on your lever arm, and it uses a diaphragm style accelerator pump. Now, ease of usability, the Edelbrock is obviously a lot more simple, and on a stock engine, that's really all you need. Now the Holley takes a little bit more know-how and understanding, but it accounts for a much more broad range of what you could encounter with engine combinations and what you might need. Now, relating to the accelerator pump circuit there, one thing that's nice about both carburetors is they do have an adjustable accelerator pump nozzle. Now again, this is what's different about the Summit. You got to change some jets, but the Holley there, you're dealing with the same thing. You have a nozzle that you can change, so you can change sizes, which alters your duration of your pump shot. So some nice stuff there. So again, altering your duration, you can either have it all at once, or you can have it spread over a longer range. And again, you have that with both style of carburetors. So that's definitely a positive on the Edelbrock and the Holley style carburetors. Alright, so getting into the guts of these carburetors here. The next thing I want to go into is kind of the power valve on the Holley and the springs and needles on your Edelbrock. They pretty much perform the same function, and what they do, and I'll explain it through way of the Holley. So kind of how it works is you have a smaller jetting size on your primary than your secondary, and that's because while you're cruising, you are only on the primary side of the carburetor, and you don't need all of the fuel that you would on the secondary at wide open throttle full load. You're at very low load. So you have what's called a power valve here on the Holley that when you reach a certain vacuum, it'll pull this in and it'll add additional fuel, and ideally it'll bring you somewhere to the air-fuel ratio that you would have set up on the back end. So if you were to pull this out, you'd have to jet up, and then your secondaries and your primaries would be jetted the same. So anyway, it kind of helps you go from cruising to power on your primary side, and it allows you to cruise with a fairly economic air-fuel ratio. Now, the Edelbrock does it similar, but they do have a heightened level of adjustability, which I do appreciate. So they have metering rods and springs, and the springs perform the same function as the power valve. As when they see a certain manifold vacuum, they will pull the metering rod out and thus make the jet larger essentially, and it'll flow more fuel. It's kind of related to a motorcycle carburetor. So just to get an idea, we have the jet down there, and we kind of see where the metering rod, get this kind of set back on here, where it goes into the Edelbrock carburetor. What's also nice about the Edelbrock is this is very easy to tune and adjust. You loosen this, pop this cover out or off to the side, and this comes up and out, and it's very simple. Now the Holley is difficult, especially on the standard Holley style. It's a little bit better on the Summit, but the standard Holley, I got to pull this block off, this metering block, and a lot of people have a tendency to crack them and ruin gaskets, and it's just expensive if you mess it up. So that's something I don't necessarily like about the Holley, and they do come in more adjustable metering block styles, but that's an added cost, and we're comparing straight across the base models. Same with the Summit, it's a little better, but it's located where my thumb is here on the bottom. Again, you still have to remove the carburetor entirely to be able to change this. So Holley generally tells you to select a power valve by taking your idle manifold vacuum and dividing it by half, and then you want to run that number. So I have a 6.5 in this carburetor here, and generally that's pretty accurate, but if you do have to go and change them, they are a pain, where again the Edelbrock is easier. So that's definitely something to consider.